the polished marble floor of the penthouse office 200 feet above. Manhattan reflected the afternoon sun and the grim countenance of Thomas Rodriguez, a titan of venture. Capel, who at 42 felt his personal life was as volatile as the market he commanded. Thomas was impeccably dressed, but the tension in his shoulders and the perpetual furrow in his brow betrayed an anxiety no amount of wealth could quell. He was not alone. Seated opposite him, looking entirely out of place in his navy uniform and soot-tinged boots, was Charles Hernandez, a seasoned firefighter and Thomas's estranged younger brother. Charles, 35, hadn't come for an investment pitch. He'd come with a warning. "Look, Thomas," Charles started, his voice a low rumble, worn slightly ragged by smoke and emergency calls. "I know we haven't seen eye to eye since Mom's will, but this isn't about that. It's about Nicholas." Nicholas was Thomas's 7-year-old son, a quiet, brilliant boy who had retreated into silence following the loss of his mother 3 years prior. Thomas had tried everything: world-class therapists, private tutors, and finally a string of highly paid caregivers, none of whom had lasted more than 2 months. The current one, Ms. Amy Young, 28, had been hired a week ago, promising stability and specialized child psychology experience. "I was on a call yesterday, a structural fire in a brownstone near the park," Charles continued. Leaning forward, resting his helmet on the floor, "I saw Amy coming out of the building. She was ... acting suspicious, rushing out with a bag, looking over her shoulder. Then, later, at the station, a friend in the precinct mentioned a recurring figure, a woman fitting her description, connected to a couple of high-end home intrusions." Thomas scoffed, waving a dismissive hand toward the panoramic window. "Charles, you're grasping at straws. Amy came from a vetted agency, background checks, references that check out. She's the 4th person I've hired this quarter. I can't afford to be paranoid just because you saw her near a fire." The truth was, Thomas was paranoid, just not about his brother's suspicions. He distrusted everyone in his sphere. They all wanted a piece of the Thorne empire, financial or social. But the idea of installing covert surveillance was a step too far, an admission of defeat and a deep violation of privacy. Charles, however, wasn't deterred. He knew his brother's skepticism was a shield. "Thomas, I am telling you, as a first responder who sees the worst of humanity. Sometimes the wolves wear sheep-esque clothing, especially around money. Just for a week, install a few cameras. It's not about distrusting her. It's about protecting Nicholas. Please, do it for the boy." Reluctantly haunted by Charles's intense gaze and the thought of Nicholas's fragile emotional state, Thomas agreed. That evening, he had his head of security discreetly install a few wireless cameras in the main living areas and Nicholas's playroom. He told himself it was purely a security measure, a response to Charles's overactive imagination. The next day, Thomas started watching. He expected to see indifference, maybe a few stolen minutes on her phone, or a subtle pilfering of office supplies. What he observed was initially baffling. Amy Young was meticulous and professional. She followed the routine exactly. She prepared healthy meals, ensured Nicholas completed his schoolwork, and maintained the environment with an almost clinical efficiency. But the way she interacted with Nicholas was different from the others. Where previous nannies had forced activities, demanding smiles or participation, Amy simply existed with him. She sat on the floor, reading quietly while Nicholas played alone with his blocks, never pressuring, just offering a calm presence. One afternoon, the footage captured a subtle but profound interaction. Nicholas, attempting to build an elaborate tower, had the structure collapse. He didn't cry or shout, he simply froze, staring at the scattered pieces, his shoulders slumping in visible defeat. Thomas watched, bracing himself for Amy to rush in with forced platitudes. Instead, Amy knelt beside him, silently picked up a single small block and placed it gently in Nicholas's palm. She didn't say, "Try again," or "It's okay." She simply said, "Sometimes you just start with one brick." Nicholas looked at the block, then at her, and for the first time in the footage, a tiny, almost imperceptible shift of tension left his face. He started building again. Thomas felt a lump form in his throat. This wasn't professional childcare. This felt like genuine emotional literacy. The monitoring continued, and Thomas's focus shifted dramatically away from suspicion of theft and toward his own home life. His current wife, Karen Gonzalez, 38. A glamorous socialite deeply invested in maintaining their elite public image rarely appeared in the footage. When she did, the contrast with Amy was jarring. One evening, Karen came home late from a charity gala. Nicholas was already asleep. She spotted a drawing Nicholas had left on the kitchen counter, a crude, colorful picture of a rocket ship. She picked it up, examined it with a look of distaste, and murmured into her phone to a friend, "Honestly, the boy's drawings are becoming increasingly messy. It's so unpolished. I might have to tell his therapist he is having another episode to justify the decision next week." She then crumpled the drawing and tossed it into the recycling bin, all unaware of the silent electronic eye recording her every move. Thomas, watching this from his office, felt a cold wave wash over him. He had convinced himself that Karen's distance was just a byproduct of her busy schedule, her high-profile commitments. Now, seeing the casual cruelty, the dismissal of his son's simple offering, and the calculated use of the word episode for a decision he didn't even know existed, was devastating. Karen was planning something involving Nicholas and a decision. The initial paranoia Charles had ignited about Amy had inadvertently led Thomas to the heart of the true conflict within his own family. He rewound the footage of Karen, watching the crumpling of the paper again, his hands shaking. He realized the risk wasn't an outsider stealing his valuables. It was an insider, systematically eroding his son's spirit. The deeper Thomas dug into the camera recordings, the clearer the pattern became. Amy wasn't just caring for Nicholas. She was providing a shield against the emotional coldness of the home. She understood Nicholas's sensitivity to loud noises and chaotic schedules, something Thomas himself had dismissed as fussiness. He saw Amy discreetly moving him away from sudden arguments between himself and Karen, or guiding him into quiet reading corners when Karen hosted large, loud gatherings. The original mandate to catch Amy in a transgression had utterly failed. Instead, the cameras were serving as a brutal, unfiltered mirror reflecting the failure of Thomas and Karen's marriage and their collective neglect of Nicholas. Thomas found himself looking forward to the quiet moments on the feed. Amy teaching Nicholas how to make a simple origami bird, or the two of them sharing a quiet laugh over a silly children's book. He felt a profound sense of shame for having suspected her, and an even deeper well of guilt for his own blindness. He had paid millions for security, but the real security for his son was coming from a person he had treated with immediate, unwarranted suspicion. The professional veneer he had built around his life was cracking under the weight of uncomfortable truths. The coming days, he knew, would force a reckoning. He was no longer looking for a thief. He was looking for answers about the integrity of his own life and the welfare of his son. The initial curiosity had turned into a desperate, silent vigil. The surveillance system, intended to catch a lie, was instead uncovering a painful reality. Thomas's life quickly transformed from a disciplined series of financial maneuvers to an obsessive, round-the-clock viewing of the camera feed. His office became a surveillance center, the gentle glow of the monitor illuminating his face as he watched the unwitting actors in his family drama. The initial shock about Karen's callousness morphed into a burning need to understand what she meant by the decision and the episode she planned to fabricate. He knew, instinctively, that it was tied to removing Nicholas permanently from the home. The idea that his own wife could plot against his child, using his son's delicate emotional state as a weapon, sent a chill through him far colder than any financial ruin. Driven by this new anxiety, Thomas secretly initiated a deeper background check on Amy, moving beyond the standard agency reports. He tasked his most trusted private investigator with finding every detail of her life, specifically looking for any motivation or history that might explain her unusual connection to Nicholas. The results were slow, but when they arrived, they were astounding. Amy Young wasn't just a nanny, she was Anna Allah, and her professional history was far more complex than a resume of childcare. She was a licensed social worker who had specialized in crisis intervention for children in the foster care system, ages 24 to 20. At age 21, she had legally changed her name after a profound personal tragedy. The tragedy was the suicide of her younger brother, Justin, who, at age 12, had been placed in a series of neglectful foster homes after the death of their parents. Justin's decline had been directly attributed to emotional manipulation and neglect in one particularly wealthy, influential family that had adopted him only for the positive optics. Anna had fought the system for years, only to lose her brother. The adoption family, shielded by their money and reputation, had never faced repercussions. This revelation clicked into place the pieces of her behavior, her patience, her refusal to push Nicholas, and her unique, almost therapeutic empathy. She wasn't seeking employment. She was seeking a mission. She had seen the signs of emotional withdrawal in Nicholas and felt compelled to step in. Using her expertise to stabilize him, Thomas realized Amy hadn't infiltrated his house for money or malice. She had come to save a child like the brother she couldn't save. Simultaneously, the conflict with Karen reached a fever pitch. She announced to Thomas during a frigid dinner in their opulent dining room that a spot had opened up at the Crestwood Academy, a prestigious and highly selective residential school in upstate Connecticut. "It's perfect, Thomas," she said, cutting into her steak with unnerving precision. "It will look wonderful on his record, and it gives us the freedom we need for the European circuit this spring." This was the decision. Thomas, armed with the camera footage of her cruel remarks, finally found his voice. "We are not sending Nicholas anywhere," he stated, his voice low and dangerous. "He's improving here. He's happy with Amy." Karen laughed, a brittle, dismissive sound. "Happy, he's clingy, and frankly, that Nanny is becoming possessive. She's unprofessional, and I suspect she's undermining my authority." The confrontation escalated dramatically the next morning. Karen, having learned somehow that Thomas was protecting Amy, found her alone in the playroom. The cameras captured the entire shocking exchange. Karen cornered Amy, her face a mask of controlled rage. "You think you're a hero, don't you? Coming into a family you know nothing about to play savior." Karen then produced a pre-written letter of resignation, demanding Amy sign it immediately and leave before she called the police. "I know things about your past. Amy, sign it, and I'll forget I ever saw you." Amy, standing her ground, her voice trembling but steady, refused. "I won't leave Nicholas until I know he is safe. What you are doing to him is unacceptable, Karen. I have seen the way you treat him." This statement triggered a catastrophic reaction. Karen, realizing Amy had leverage, physically shoved a vase off a nearby table, shattering it dramatically, then immediately began to scream, calling out for Thomas and accusing Amy of attacking her and threatening Nicholas. Thomas, viewing this live feed from his office, felt a sickening surge of adrenaline. He rushed home, arriving just as Karen was dramatically calling the police and threatening to press charges against Amy for assault and property damage. The house was chaos. Thomas intervened, calmly directing Amy to wait in the study while he dealt with Karen. He pulled his wife aside, his face inches from hers. "Stop it, Karen. It's over. I saw the whole thing. The cameras recorded you pushing the vase, you fabricating the assault, everything. Every single moment of your emotional abuse toward Nicholas is on file." Karen's confident veneer finally cracked. Her eyes widened, a flicker of panic crossing her features before she quickly regained composure, her rage doubling down. "You install cameras on your own wife? You trust that pathetic social worker over me? You will regret this, Thomas. I will ensure you lose everything, your reputation, your company, and custody of that difficult child." The conflict transformed into a legal and emotional war zone. Karen moved out, leveraging her powerful family connections to hire a notorious litigation firm. She obtained an immediate but temporary restraining order against Amy, citing the fabricated assault and emphasizing Amy's name change as proof of deceitful intent. Amy was forced to leave the premises, but not before sharing a quiet, tearful moment with Nicholas, promising him she would return. Nicholas, sensing the monumental shift, grew silent again, retreating further than ever before. Thomas was now fighting on two fronts: the legal battle against his wife and the internal battle to reconnect with his son. He sat with Nicholas in the quiet playroom, his heart heavy, trying to be the father he should have been. It was during one of these somber sessions that Nicholas, usually so reserved, pointed to a loose floorboard near his desk. He had drawn a picture that morning, a simple crayon drawing of a smiling boy and a woman with kind eyes, and he wanted to protect it. When Thomas lifted the board, he didn't just find the drawing. He found a small, hidden journal belonging to Karen. It was here, in a small, locked book, that Thomas found the turning point of the entire conflict. Detailed, precise entries that mapped out Karen's years-long criminal enterprise. She wasn't just a scorned wife. She was a professional infiltrator, an operative who married wealthy men, slowly poisoned their relationship with their children, and then used fabricated mental health issues to secure favorable divorce settlements and asset control. The journal mentioned her previous targets, And one name leapt out at Thomas: Justin Reyes, Amy's brother, the man who was supposed to be in protective custody. Karen wasn't just manipulating Nicholas. She had directly contributed to the death of Amy's brother years ago. She was a murderer with a corporate strategy. This discovery changed everything. It wasn't just about a divorce. It was about exposing a dangerous predator who had targeted his family and caused irreparable harm to Amy. Thomas now knew that if he failed, Karen would not only win the divorce, but she would destroy Amy's life, just as she had destroyed Justin's. The game was no longer financial. It was a matter of justice and survival. This is the central development of the plot. I'm pausing here. If you're enjoying this story and want to know how Thomas exposes his wife and gets Amy back, make sure you subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the dramatic conclusion. And tell me in the comments, if you were Thomas and you discovered your spouse had harmed another family years ago, what would be the very first move you would make to protect your child and seek justice? The weight of Karen's journal, a physical testament, 2 years of calculated malice and murder, settled heavily in Thomas's hands. The sophisticated crime wasn't just an affair of the heart. It was a meticulous, multi-victim extortion and homicide ring masquerading as a high society marriage. The detail about Justin Reyes, Amy's brother, confirmed the worst. Karen was not just emotionally negligent, she was lethal. The legal battle was now secondary to a criminal investigation, and Thomas knew he had to move with precision and secrecy. He immediately reached out to Charles, a firefighter, whose initial warning had started this entire painful journey. Charles, who had connections within the NIPD and specialized in high-risk tactical planning, became Thomas's silent partner. They met in a secluded warehouse, reviewing all the footage and the journal entries. Charles connected Thomas with a former homicide detective who specialized in white-collar crime, and together they built a case that was airtight, linking Karen's movements and financial shell corporations to the previous victims listed in her journal, including the original unresolved case of Justin Reyes. The video evidence of the staged assault on Amy and the documentation of emotional abuse toward Nicholas became the undeniable proof of her character and motives. The climax arrived not in a courtroom, but in a tense, high-stakes operation. Thomas's surveillance team, still running discreetly, intercepted a series of cryptic, coded messages from Karen to a shadowy figure. The messages detailed a final, desperate plan, an exit strategy involving the liquidation of a substantial amount of Thomas's assets and a one-way cheek to a known extradition country. Critically, the messages also revealed her intention to permanently silence Amy, whom she viewed as the only person capable of identifying her pattern and testifying against her history with Justin. Reyes. Karen had arranged for Amy to meet her in a public park under the guise of an apology and a financial settlement, planning for an associate to stage a random mugging that would leave Amy critically injured or dead. Thomas, Charles, and the detective team had minutes to act. They raced to the park, arriving just as Karen's associate, disguised as a park maintenance worker, approached Amy. Charles, using his training, created a diversion of controlled, loud burst from a fire extinguisher, drawing immediate attention. This allowed the detective team to swarm the operative, and Karen, who was watching from a distance. The shock on Karen's face, captured by a long-range camera, was total. The confident, calculated mask she had worn for years finally shattered. She was arrested on the spot. The evidence from the journal, the intercepted communication, and Thomas's video recordings providing irrefutable proof of conspiracy to commit murder, aggravated fraud, and historical evidence linking her to the death of Justin Reyes. The ensuing trial was swift and brutal. The evidence Thomas had meticulously gathered: the video of Karen crumpling Nicholas's drawing, the detailed log of her manipulations, and the recorded plot against Amy was devastating. Karen was convicted of first-degree murder in the case of Justin Reyes, along with multiple counts of fraud and conspiracy. Justice, raw and uncompromising, had been served. The emotional resolution began with a quiet reunion. Amy was cleared of all false charges, and the restraining order was lifted. She returned to the penthouse, not as a hired hand, but as a trusted ally. Thomas, humbled and permanently changed by his experience, dropped to one knee, not to propose, but to apologize. "Amy," he said, his voice thick with emotion, "I was so blinded by my own world, my own success, that I created a life where my son was invisible. I treated you with suspicion when you were the only real person in his life. I am so sorry for my judgment, my doubt, and the harm my negligence caused you." Amy understanding the immense personal journey he had taken, accepted his apology, offering him forgiveness that felt earned, not freely given. The ultimate reconciliation was with Nicholas. The boy, finally safe and secure in the absence of Karen's cold shadow, flourished. He and Amy shared an unbreakable bond forged in crisis. Thomas, taking a step back from his demanding career, dedicated his time to truly being a father. A year later, Thomas and Amy married in a private, intimate ceremony, and Thomas officially adopted Nicholas, legally changing his name to Nicholas Thornrace, a symbolic union of their two previously broken families. The lesson learned was profound. Wealth offers no immunity from human depravity, and true security lies not in surveillance, but in unconditional presence and trust. Thomas and Amy didn't just rebuild their family, they turned their pain into purpose. They founded the Justin Reyes Child Advocacy Group, using Thomas's financial resources and Amy's expertise to create an organization that proactively investigates cases of emotional neglect and psychological manipulation within affluent families, the very niche Karen had exploited. They ensured that no other child, like Justin or the withdrawn Nicholas, would ever feel invisible again. Thank you for watching the dramatic conclusion of this story. We are so glad you stayed with us until the end. If this story touched you and you appreciate content that explores overcoming injustice and finding a new beginning, we would love to have you join our community. Please hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell so you never miss another powerful narrative. Also, we always love connecting with our audience. Tell us in the comments which city or country you are watching our stories from. Did you like this video? And most importantly, what single biggest lesson about trust and family integrity did you learn from Thomas's journey?